Good afternoon, hoka hey everyone. It's a gloomy Tuesday, somewhat befitting the mood of the town, given what happened Sunday in Cleveland to the Steelers. An eventful Mike Tomlin news conference today. Not something you can say very often. Those usually are nothing more than a chance for him to come up with clever catchphrases like backup quarterback friendly. That was one that came out today, and to a lesser extent last week. A beauty from him. We have a lot of things on our plate today. Tyler Boyd, the star of the 60 wins in a row Clareton High School team, the prize recruit in the area, somebody who's considering Pitt, who Pitt is obviously considering since they seem to be offering scholarships to pretty much everybody in his neighborhood to entice him to come. Kevin Gorman, the Trib's preeminent recruiting expert in the area, will be on later in the show at around 1:30, so we'll have a lot of that type of thing today. Recruiting, looking at Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia, where they're headed. But yeah, it's still about the Steelers. It's still about how this team is going to overcome having what now, unless I'm miscounting here, is 8 players out of 22 total starters. That's an unimaginable hill to climb. They're 6-5. They're going into Baltimore. Mike Tomlin needed to take some kind of strong action, at least what was within his power. And today, I thought he at least began that process. The number one thing, and I wrote this from Cleveland, was that he had to come up with one running back and stick by that back. And that includes if he fumbles. My choice for that had been, over the last 2-3 weeks, Jonathan Dwyer, if healthy. Dwyer's healthy. That's who Tomlin went with today. I like it. I'm not wild about the whole Mendenhall down to third, but I think I understand that, because if you want Isaac Redmond to be your short yardage guy, then there's no point in playing around with who's second and third if you know Redmond's going to be out there on a 3rd and 1 or down at the goal line. It sends a good message to those running backs, particularly to Dwyer. We're going to stick with you. You're not going to look over your shoulder every time you're carrying the football. It's the right move. It's one that I think is going to pay off. What's one bad move from Tomlin, I think, today, and we'll see if this changes over the course of the week, is having Kelvin Beachum play right tackle, especially if Ben Roethlisberger is the quarterback. Kelvin Beachum is not an NFL starting lineman. He's a third stringer for a reason. I would much rather have seen Ramon Foster, who's played some tackle, shift from right guard to right tackle and put David DeCastro in at right guard. And I know football coaches all get hung up on this guy practiced X number of times. This guy took 4 snaps once in an NFL game, so he's more qualified. David DeCastro is a first-round pick. He knows the playbook. They said as much going back to training camp. If David DeCastro is healthy, there's no reason a player of his pedigree, and don't forget, this was a guy that a lot of teams saw as a legitimate steal, where Pittsburgh ended up taking him later in the first round. No reason he shouldn't be on the field this week. It's not ideal no matter how you do it, but I like the Steelers' chances of keeping their quarterback alive a lot better with Ramon Foster out there. I'd also like their chances of keeping Heath Miller involved in the offense a lot better. If they didn't have to keep Miller in to help Kelvin Beachum, and I'll bet you that's what's going to end up happening. The biggest issue, though, out of the Mike Tomlin press conference today, as I saw it, was one that he really didn't seem to want to talk about too much, and that was Mike Wallace. He throws out as much of a bombshell as you can on a depth chart release. Those things are usually just complete formalities. In fact, the one that they put out this morning has Ben listed as the starting quarterback. It has Mike Adams, who everybody knows isn't playing, listed as a starting right tackle. But they put an either-or for Mike Wallace or Emmanuel Sanders at wide receiver. That's pretty telling. It's pretty damning, too, I might add. You know that Mike Tomlin isn't trying to send Emmanuel Sanders a message. You know that he saw what we all saw, especially those of us in Cleveland who were paying attention to Wallace away from the play, waltzing back to the huddle. I saw a couple of occasions where he would get near the huddle, just as it broke up. His body language was terrible. We all saw how he didn't go up for the 50-50 balls. He was pouting. He was waving his arms after one particularly bad pass by Charlie Batch. That's not going to get it done. Never mind the fact that he's only amassed 48 receiving yards over the last 3 games. It's 48 over 3 games for a guy who really should be doing that on one good play. That's an issue that Mike Tomlin's going to have to address if he didn't already. I'd have to assume that he did. I'd have to assume that yesterday, looking at how long the Steelers players were forced to stay around headquarters, how long they were asked to watch film, that Mike Tomlin and Mike Wallace would have had quite a confrontation at some point. Obviously, I'm just guessing here. But something like what happened this morning with the depth chart thing doesn't just come completely out of the blue. It's not the way that the player is going to find out about it. He can't be happy with Mike Wallace. At the same time, he can't just bench him. He's too big a part of the offense. So instead of treating Mike Wallace the way he did Rashard Mendenhall today, he kind of did it with some kid gloves, at least publicly. Is that the right move? Are any of these the right move, the wrong move? I'd love to hear from you today.